First of all, don't worry, the phone is on a mount, so I'm being safe. But nonetheless, it's Joshua Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? And every photo and video, like the one you're looking at right now on the road to San Diego, was taken on the cameras of the HTC Desire Eye. And of course, since we have 13 megapixels on the front-facing camera, you'll see a lot of self-portraits in this video. These two were taken when I was outdoors doing the unboxing, but let's get indoors and see what that performance is like. The grain and the fuzz and the noise just really tend to flood in here, and as is the case with a lot of smartphone cameras, the low-light performance is just aggressively decent, not really all that great when you compare it to outdoor shots, which we'll have a lot more of later on. These 100 crops will show you how the detail kind of tapers off there, and the noise and the grain just really smudges everything out. It's kind of unfortunate because the low light performance is probably where the HTC Desire Eye needed to really sort of excel, because it was going to focus on being a self-portrait camera experience. But nonetheless, it is still a fun experience, which I'll get into later, with all of the different modes like the split capture as you see right here, and a couple of the post-production modes like being able to merge faces together and have a lot of fun with your photos after you take them. I did find that the auto exposure on either camera did sometimes have some trouble, especially in lower light situations, of really getting the white balance perfectly right, and you'll see it in this next photo where everything was just yellowed out when I used the auto white balance, and I had to manually set it to incandescent white balance, and then everything started to look okay after that. So one thing that's really nice about having a 13 megapixel camera up front is that it is also kind of wide, which makes vlogging with this particular phone quite nice. The picture quality I'm still sort of on the fence about, but as far as video goes, I do enjoy using the front-facing camera, especially for these small little moments where I get to talk to you a little bit, vlog style. But now we can finally get into the outdoor shots, and this is where either of the camera actually starts to hit more than it does miss. The reason why is because with all of the lighting, as is usually the case with smartphone cameras, a lot of the detail can be captured, and there's a little bit more data for those sensors to be able to capture. Front-facing camera right here with a little bit of a lens flare, but you can see that the detail actually looks quite nice, and the colors look pretty accurate. There's a little bit of a level of saturation here, but it doesn't keep it from going too far off one end, and then at the same time, these photos aren't really too bland either. So really, it's an average performer that tends to do better jobs out in the daylight. As far as modes go, here is the photo booth mode, where you can get 4 different photos and stitch them together in a number of different ways, but the auto exposure can also be kind of aggressive, as you can see there, with my one photo on the bottom right being lighter than the rest. A quick mention about the dedicated camera button on the bottom right hand of the unit. It's a nice addition to have for pretty much any smartphone camera, but on the HTC Desire Eye it has one big problem. Holding it halfway down allows you to lock the focus and the exposure, which is nice because you can change the composition of your photo on the fly, but pressing it all the way down is kind of tough. It's a very squishy button, and what that ends up doing to your photo is blurring it out, because your hand and thus the phone will move while you're trying to trigger that shutter. It's just a kind of a big annoyance that I had with the phone. Stabilization looks like it's okay. I'm really tensing up in order to keep this thing smooth though. But nonetheless, you're seeing that the quality on the rear or the front-facing cameras tend to be quite good out in the daylight. The front-facing camera does tend to overexpose the photo just a little bit when compared to the rear, but as you can see here, there's a really nice coloration to these, pretty good detail, and things tend to look quite good as long as you have a very nicely lit situation. A lot of the photos that I take on here are pretty much perfect for social media, especially when you use the split capture, which I personally love using. And ultimately, for social media or anybody that really wants to just put themselves out there on places like Instagram, these cameras do a pretty good job of doing that. And then finally, we have some HDR photos here. You can see how blown out the background is, and then I turned on HDR and things started to look a lot better. HDR does a pretty good job on the HTC Desire Eye when you use it in the right situations, and these are pretty much those situations where the background is really blown out and then it needs to lighten up the foreground. And then when the sun starts to go down, you can get some lighter photos using HDR, as you can see right here in Old Town San Diego. go. And as the sun continues to go down, you can get even better shots then, a lot lighter, but the detail does tend to get a little bit grainy after that. Ultimately, the HDR mode is useful in particular situations, not for every photo, so it's not something I would suggest having on all the time. And on the rear-facing camera, it can help if you are in the right particular moment. But on the front-facing camera, HDR simply doesn't really do a whole lot. Maybe lightens up the photo a little bit, but nothing too drastic. So as always, keep it tuned to Android Authority for all of the best coverage, and wait for my full review on this phone where I will get a little bit more into the general experience concerning the modes. But for now, I wanted to show you the quality of the front and rear facing cameras on here. Ultimately, it's a hit or miss situation, more missing than hitting, especially when you factor in the indoor and low light situations. But as far as social media goes, this is a great combination to have, and with the split capture, one of my favorite modes, you can have quite a bit of fun with this camera. Nonetheless, keep it tuned here, and don't forget to check out the content from my brothers in Android. Drop us some likes and subscribe if you haven't already, because AndroidAuthority.com is your source for all things Android.